Welcome, weebs, gamers, and nerds alike. Winter 2026 was hands down one of the most stacked, high-octane seasons we've ever had, especially when it comes to action shows. With that, we got not only some of the best fights of the year so far, heck, some of the best fights of the decade, or even longer. So in today's video, we go over 10 of the best fights in Winter 2026. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on more content, and without further ado, let's get into the list. Kicking off this list, we have the free-for-all between Richard, Gilgamesh, Hercules, and Jack the Ripper from Fate Strange Fake. There are a number of fights from this show that you could put on here, and heck, there's even one more on here later on this list. But we had to start with this one with how completely insane it is. You basically have a 1v1v1v1 with no sides really working together and everyone trying to kill each other. The tricks and schemes that Jack the Ripper tries to pull off, even going so far as to swap places with his master. Hercules going completely berserk and letting loose arrow after arrow, demon snake after monster. Multiple noble phantasms being used, the battle of king versus king between Gilgamesh and King Richard, where it pretty much ended up in a stalemate until the very end, the interference from another entity, and the complete shock of who the first hero to die is. This fight had it all, and to top it off, might have been A1 Pictures' best animation ever, which is saying a lot, because the studio just keeps getting better and better. It's completely ridiculous how they manage to top themselves every episode, and a soundtrack from the legendary Hiroyuki Sawano, and this fight is easily one of the best of the season. Next up, we have Arthur vs. Dragon. This one was a little controversial, as for some people, this didn't live up to the hype. We, however, are not part of that group, as the fight was absolutely amazing. The story impact of Arthur becoming the Night King and giving the world hope as it's on the verge of collapsing from despair was delivered beautifully. This whole show, Arthur is shown as an oaf, the comedic relief, almost the perfect pair for the more cynical and logical Shinra. So when he gives everything, including his life for the sake of the people, it really pulls on the heartstrings. Of course, visually, David Productions did a fantastic job. This looked jaw-dropping, with some great choreography and lighting, amazing visuals, and the scene of Arthur cutting the earth in half was the cherry on top of an already amazing episode. People tend to be harsh, and with the insane hype around the fight, of course it wasn't going to live up to people's expectations. But this was really well done and executed the fight in a fitting way, giving us potentially the best fight in all of Fire Force, and one of the best fights in this insane season of anime. Next up, we have Higuruma vs. Yuji and JJK. Of all the JJK fights, this is definitely not on anyone's bingo cards, probably. Don't get me wrong, the fight is great in the manga, but there wasn't a whole lot to it. It was short, sweet, and to the point, but Mappa decided, nah, hold my beer, and went completely nuts with it. We got to truly see Higuruma, who was basically made it to grade 1, if not basically special grade status in 12 days of having his technique. Basically putting him up there with Gojo in terms of potential against Yuji, who is one of the best hand-to-hand fighters in the verse. What really made this episode such a visual spectacle was Neon41, a Chinese animator who has made some amazing scenes in a couple dongwa like Supercube. This was also one of the first times we saw a domain expansion that wasn't an instant hit kill mechanic with deadly sentencing, and the design was insane. This was so much fun to watch and had such a satisfying ending too, leaving us excited for every next episode in JJK. Next up, we have Maki vs. Zenin Clan. Speaking of insane JJK fights, this is probably one of the most anticipated this season, and oh boy did it deliver. Now, my sacrifice would have hit harder if she were more prevalent in the show, but nonetheless, it was a pretty good send-off for the character. The other humbling Maki gave her dad, and I mean, how can you not like the Kill Bill reference with the extremely catchy song in the background? The choreography, the insane animation, and it only gets more and more amazing as she takes on stronger members of the clan, basically becoming the second coming of Toji, striking utter fear in everyone. And oh, the finale of giving Naoya the biggest haymaker and putting it on replay was just chef's kiss perfection. This fight was amazing from beginning to end and also helped set the tone for how amazing this season was going to be. There's still one more huge fight that we're going to be getting soon, but this definitely takes the cake as of right now. Next up, we have the Divine Revolte fight from Freeren. Studio Madhouse really saw everyone trash-talking Season 2 and said, alright bet, hold my beer, and delivered a masterclass of animation and storytelling, giving one of the best animated fights this decade. They got some amazing people to work on it too, including Kiki Fujimoto, who directed the fight between Fern and the demons in Season 1, the GOAT himself, Yutaka Nakamura, who's responsible for Stark vs. the Red Dragon, Saitama vs. Boros, and a lot more, and the director and action director of the Chainsaw Man Rize arc as key animators. The movement was seamless and fluid. You seriously couldn't take your eyes off the screen. The story impact of Freerun having full faith in Fern to win the fight, Methode completely disrespecting the demon and showing everyone just how powerful she is, and Stark and Ganao beating Revolte with gorgeous choreography, exciting music, and a satisfying payoff. Freerun has never been about the fights, but when they do happen, they deliver some of the best we've ever seen. Now we have Gatentusai and Chobe versus Jufa and Taofa. Season 2 has been a very solid improvement on Season 1 with Hell's Paradise, with better pacing, good character building and development, and of course, better animation, with one of the high points being the fight between Gatentusai and Chobe versus the twins Tao and Jufa. Gatentusai, as we've come to learn, was horrible with Tao manipulation and couldn't really use it very well until his battle with Tao Fa, where he plucked out his own eyeball to force himself to rely on his senses, and by God, the crazy move worked. At the same time, Chobe and his brother were seamlessly fighting Ju Fa, so when they merged and became a damn near immortal monster, their odds seemed kinda slim. The team up was fun to watch and made sense with each of their roles, the callback to one of Ganta Tensusai's famous moves, and the smooth and colorful animation helped really bring things together. Mappa really has stepped it up in Season 2, and this fight is definitely a shining example of that. Next, we have Xylo and Terrorita versus the first Demon Lord and Sentenced to be a Hero. Sentenced to be a Hero has turned out to be absolutely amazing, done by Studio Kai, made from former Mushoku Tensei members, which is pretty evident. And while there have been a lot of really good fights, we think the first big fight against the Demon Lord is the best of the bunch. The first episode was already crazy with high-octane action, great world building, and setting up of the main cast of characters, with none more important than the MC Xylo Fairbart. The battle against the Demon Blight was going extremely tough, and they were heavily outmatched. And then comes Xylo, who ended up basically making a pact with a goddess named Terrorita, who can summon swords, kind of similar to Gilgamesh from the Fate franchise. We see huge explosions, and the final gigantic sword and crazy animation that follows just left us in awe, and did what every first episode of a brand new show should do, and hooked us in for the long haul. The compositing, the shading, the soundtrack, and the voice acting really all were done phenomenally, while leading to an exhilarating fight that stands out amongst the litany of top-tier fights this season. Next up, we have Eraserhead vs. Toad from My Hero Vigilantes. This season has felt like a pretty big departure from Season 1, especially since our and many other favorite character, Knuckle Duster, hasn't really been present. However, the backstory we got for Eraserhead, i.e. Aizawa, was actually really heartfelt and brought a tear to your eye. At this moment, his closest friend, Shikamaru, who would go on to be Kurogiri in the main series, was crushed saving some innocent bystanders. However, Aizawa still heard his voice cheering him on and giving him the motivation he needed to push past his limits and go plus ultra to take down the villain. The animation was actually really solid. The comic art style for the series is such a great design choice, and it's executed extremely well here. Add on top of that the great music and the emotional weight of Aizawa using all of his abilities to bring down the gigantic villain we even pro heroes had struggled with, and you get yourself one hell of a fight. Now we have a surprising one in Orin versus the Black Dragon in Jack of All Trades Party of None. Now the new trope of getting kicked out of the hero's party but actually turns out to be overpowered and makes the old party either mad or jealous because of this fact is not really a good plotline and isn't usually executed very well. For some reason this show managed to do it pretty damn well. At this point, our titular character is helping out with a training expedition when a dragon that escaped a lower floor because of the former party just being ass shows up to rain havoc. He proceeds to take the dragon head on in a 1v1, and it was surprisingly a very solid fight. We see Orin use all of his techniques he's been teaching over recent episodes to the highest degree. See some pretty solid spells and creative movement ideas as he bounces around taking huge swings at the dragon. The animation, while not the best we've ever seen by any means, is still overall good, and the CGI dragon doesn't look too bad. Once the finishing move comes out, finishing the dragon, it both looks and feels pretty dang good, especially when the old party finds out he dog-walked the monster that whipped their ass. To round out this list, we have the vampire versus the priest in Fate Strange Fake. You seriously could put any, and I truly do mean any of the fights from this season on here, and you'd be justified because they're all insanely well animated, voice acted, choreographed, drawn, lighted, some other word to describe just how awesome they are. We decided to go with this over-the-top fight from the halfway point of the season. We finally get introduced to the priest who would be overseeing this Holy Grail war, and he did not disappoint in the slightest. This all happens when the police force tries their best to take down Jester, a vampire, who barged into the police station after they took Saber into custody. Once he makes a mockery of them, and we do absolutely mean a mockery of the police force, with their fake noble phantasms, the priest steps in and with his 75% robotic augmented body goes toe-to-toe with Jester. Usually you'd want to keep the Holy Grail War secret from the public, but they throw that completely out the window with explosions, cars flying, and just downright carnage across the streets. This fight was so fun to watch, and it was done so extremely well, it felt criminal not to put it on this list. And that wraps up our list for the best fights in winter 2026. Of course, there were so many to choose from, we had to leave a couple off. So let us know in the comments what your favorite fights from this season were. Make sure to follow us on Twitch and TikTok for more geeky goodness. Subscribe for more geek content. Until the next time, keep on geeking on.